500 bones, memorize them all for the exam next week. Okay? First thing we're going to talk about are the two parts of the skeleton. We have an axial skeleton and an appendicular skeleton. Appendicular is like your appendages, your arms, your legs. Your axial skeleton is going to be everything else. To me, the only tricky part here is your shoulders and your pelvis are considered part of the appendicular skeleton. They're considered part of your arm, part of your leg, not part of your axis in the middle. Okay? So the way I do it, appendicular skeleton is your arms, your legs, your pelvis, your shoulders. The axial skeleton is everything else. Does that make sense? So here, it's showing the green is the appendicular, the bone color is just the axial skeleton. The learning objectives want us to know bones for two specific parts of our body. There is the pelvis, and our sinuses. We need to talk about our pelvis a little bit. We need to know the bones, and we also need to know the differences between the male and female pelvis. So if we look at this, there aren't a whole lot of bones here. I mean, we have two of these very big bones, okay? So this is going to be the greater pelvis. And then in the middle, there is the sanctum. So if we look at the male versus the female, there's going to be a few differences. The male is going to be heavier and thicker, whereas the female is going to be wider, shallower, lighter, and it's going to have more open space in it. Number one, the easiest one, why is the women's going to be wider?
Maybe
to carry a child, right? Just support that weight in there. One thing we're going to see is in the male, the sacrum in the middle is narrower than in the woman's. Why? Same reason down here, this little triangle here, it's the subpubic angle, is how narrow that angle is. In the men, it's narrow. In the woman, it's wide. Childbirth. Child's head is quite big. You need a lot of space to get that head out of there. Okay? To me, the more tricky question here, why is the male's heavier and thicker?
because the women's, doesn't it kind of turn softer? Don't the bones turn softer at one point?
Doesn't a woman's pelvis like open up in childbirth or something?
I always thought that it got like kind of softer so it could flex a little bit. I don't know.
That's not something, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not something I'm familiar with. Think about it. So if something is thicker, if the men's is thicker, what does that mean about the women? Thinner. So maybe it's not that men's got thicker than normal, women's got thinner than normal, which makes the men's thicker by default. Why would the women's have gotten thinner?
It's wider.
It's wider.
Has a greater surface area.
And so if you take the same amount of bone, stretch it to make it bigger, it's going to be lighter. Why else? Let's say it doesn't have to be that. You can add more bone to make a bigger thick. Why would you not want to do that?
More weight?
More weight. If you take a wide pelvis and make it the same thickness as that, it's going to be just flat out heavier. And if you could say, well, maybe a heavier pelvis would be a good thing. But you could say, well, maybe a heavier skull would be a good thing. And maybe a heavier forearm would be a good thing. And maybe a heavier kneecap would be a good thing. But eventually, you turn into a transformer that can't walk, right? You're like a RoboCop with rusty hinges, right? And so you have to draw a line somewhere. You have to balance protection and function versus reality. You have to stay light enough to be mobile. At this point in our evolution, it may not be a bad thing. But when you're running from predators, you need to be quick. The other thing to talk about is the skull, and not even the whole skull, just our sinuses in the front. And so in the front, we have these paranasal sinuses. They are essentially open spaces. At least they're supposed to be unless you have allergies. If you have allergies, they are not, unfortunately, open. And so lining these open spaces are mucous membranes. And then inside the mucous membrane is the air. Couple of things. The air is going to allow us to speak louder. When we speak, we create sound waves. They're going to come up into my nasal sinuses, resonate, amplify, and then come back out. And then also is going to kind of lighten the weight of our skull. If you can add air pockets, that's just extra weight that you've gotten rid of. And so, especially on your head, a heavy head is just going to make you kind of fall over, right? And so what you really need to remember here are, number one, it's lined by mucous membrane. There's an air sac, and then you also need to know the names of these four sinuses. And so kind of up here, we have the frontal sinuses. Down here, next to our nose, are the maxillary sinuses. Connecting the two, essentially, is the ethmoid sinus. And then all the way back by our ears is the sphenoid sinus. So there's only four of them. You're going to have to memorize it. Okay. So any questions about this stuff? Okay.